Welcome back to the monorail. This is the Disney Deep Dive with the Daws. And joining me in order to complete the dynamic duo is one, Landon the Daws Doan. Landon, welcome back to the monorail.
Hi, buddy. How you doing?
I'm good, man. I hope you are too. I know it's been a tough football weekend for us, but we're gonna bounce back.
What's football? I don't know what that is.
We're gonna just move ahead. I may or may not have made a joke recently now that we know Disney has announced this strategic alliance with UCF. Maybe I need to announce a new alliance. I don't know.
Boo.
Stay tuned.
You get your backside out of the transfer portal. I will come down to Orlando, Florida, and put my, God willing, 3-9 Tennessee Vols put in your backside. Yes, we're praying for 3 wins here on Rocky Top. Send help. Send FEMA. Send Jesus. Jesus, send somebody.
Jesus, take the wheel.
Amen. Anyway, yeah, other than that, we're doing great. Hi, buddy, once again.
Well, we are here today to get the Disney Deep Dive with the Daws train back on the rails. We missed out last week because there was a very special episode of which you were a part, where we were discussing our exciting adventure down in Galaxy's Edge with Frank Cardillo. And of course, that kind of episode, I don't know what I was thinking. I really thought that, this will probably be a 20, 30-minute conversation. And no, of course it wasn't.
Yeah.
Honestly, it probably could have gone on for another hour or more.
Oh, easily. We could have kept going. It was just you had to go catch a movie with McKenna Monorail. Otherwise, heck, we still might be talking about Galaxy's Edge. Though I am kind of disappointed you didn't go back and edit the parts where I said, "Man, can you not believe what I said in that segment of M34D?" You made me sound like a fool, man. What the hey?
I set it up. I thought it was funny because I was like, you may or may not have been on the last segment, and obviously you weren't. So
yeah, clearly I wasn't, or was I?
Prior segment. Well, we're gonna make it for today. We're gonna have an adventure of our own as we step into a storybook world and take a ride on the many adventures of Winnie the Pooh.
Oh, yes. Bother.
Back to Fantasyland we go, and another dark ride, another fun family ride, and one that hasn't been there from the very start, but at this point, it's been with us 20 years. We actually just celebrated in June the 20th anniversary of the many adventures of Winnie the Pooh in the Magic Kingdom, which is unbelievable. It's kind of crazy it's been with us that long. But yeah,
it's kind of crazy it's been with us that long, but on the flip side, it's kind of crazy it's only been with us this long, because this is something I guess I realized but had to be reminded doing the research for this segment. There hasn't always been a Winnie the Pooh attraction, and in the Disney era that you and I grew up, I mean, Pooh was a monster. Like in a good sense, not a bad sense. I just want a clarification. He was a monster when it came to merchandise and popularity. So I was again, I realized this, but I guess I needed it jogged in my memory. I was surprised that it's only, quote unquote, only been around for 20 years.
Yeah, I know. But I think what happens is you think back to the history of where this attraction is, and you realize, oh, well, there was something.
Exactly.
There.
Yeah, you quickly remember. Oh, yeah, there was a such and such wild ride there, wasn't there?
Yeah, something that may have gotten canned that people ended up protesting about, and that was an interesting time in Disney history. I kind of wonder if that was like.
By the way, we have a full M34D of Mr. Toad's Wild Ride, the ride we're vaguely referencing. So be sure and check that out in the iTunes store. Also available at MondayMorningRailPodcast.com.
That's right.
Because you have the longest URL in the world.
Yeah. When we talked about Mr. Toad's Wild Ride and we started talking about as it closed and as they kind of announced where they were going, the people coming in the park and basically picketing. Protest
Occupy Fantasyland.
Yeah, that I wonder if that's one of the first times a ride closure was treated with that sort of a backlash. I mean, and in the times that we've been doing M34D, maybe it's happened at Disneyland. I don't know that it's happened, in Disney World. I mean, before that, because obviously nowadays it happens all the time. This is what we do.
Haven't you been on Diz Twitter? It's like they're a ball of anger, constantly outraged about something, it seems like.
Yeah.
Did you hear what might or might not happen to Figment? Good God. Leave a like and subscribe and comment, please.
Well, I think personally, I certainly do miss Mr. Toad's Wild Ride in the Magic Kingdom, but it makes it, for me, it's easier to take because it still exists. It's still in Disneyland, and if you want to experience that, I kind of like the fact that they've got differences in the two parks, and they aren't just identical. So there's some things that you can experience here that you can't experience there, and vice versa. So that makes it a little easier. The other piece of this, as I was doing some research, was the fact that the Winnie the Pooh as a character and the Winnie the Pooh stories actually meant a lot to Walt himself. And as I kind of read through, basically what I learned was that Walt, his daughter, actually was a huge fan of Winnie the Winnie the Pooh stories, and he initially tried to get the rights to Winnie the Pooh to start developing Disney Winnie the Pooh in, I think it said 1938.
Wow.
Yeah, and so it ended up taking several years. I think it kind of ended up that it was in the 60s, like 66 or so, when he actually ended up getting the rights to Winnie the Pooh, and it became a Disney owned property at that point. But and then the ride, as it's called the Mini Adventures of Winnie the Pooh. It actually kind of takes several different little stories and kind of weaves them together. And the movie, the featurette, The Mini Adventures of Winnie the Pooh, was one of the last animation productions that Walt Disney himself actually had a hand in. He actually oversaw some of the development of that movie, and that was one of the last ones he was involved in. So Walt is really kind of a part of this. His DNA is part of this ride and part of this story and part of these characters through the fact that his daughter had such a fond feeling towards them. So maybe if you know a little bit of that, it helps a little bit ease the pain of what we lost for the fact that this. I mean, while Mr. Toad's Wild Ride is unique and interesting and fun,
I mean, they send you to hell, y'all.
I don't know if Walt had the same affinity for it as he did for Mr. Toad. So keep that in mind while you're grumping and complaining, and you're allowed to do that, but just keep in mind Walt would have been happy to see this ride go to the Magic Kingdom.
Yeah, probably. And also, while you're grumping and complaining, maybe go stand to that interactive queue that's been updated here in the last decade-ish plus. Wait, no, longer than a decade at this point. But regardless, very cool interactive queue, but I'm sure we'll get to that.
Yeah. Oh, one update. So he did attempt to get the movie rights in 1938, but he succeeded in 61. I think I said 66. So I missed that one by a few years. But
man, how dare you?
I know. So thus, the idea to create a Winnie the Pooh attraction was born. And actually, the idea first came to the Imagineers' minds in the 70s. And they were going to put it initially at Disneyland in California because Fantasyland was about to be redone. So they started to kind of develop this idea, we're going to put Winnie the Pooh out in Disneyland. But when the new Fantasyland opened in 83, there was no Winnie the Pooh attraction. It just wasn't there. And
again, going back to my earlier statement, I'm surprised it's taken up till 99 for a Winnie the Pooh attraction to make it to a Disney park, period.
Yeah, exactly. So they basically it got put on the back burner, got put on hold, and it just ended up being that they had this perfect space for it whenever they decided to change out the Mr. Toad's Wild Ride. And part of that was because the characters, the Winnie the Pooh characters, actually kind of went through a resurgence in popularity in the 90s, and so that was really like, well, now it's time to it is finally time to strike while the iron's hot. So it's like if you wait long enough, everything will become popular again.
Absolutely. Popularity's cyclical, everybody.
Same reason that now we just now got a Star Wars land in Hollywood studios, and that's only 45 years or so.
So timely,
but popular again as I drink from my Black Spire Outpost first order
on brand. I like that.
Delicious Empire coffee.
By the way, real quick, speaking on your Empire coffee, didn't y'all go back to Galaxy's Edge here recently?
Uh, I went with, yeah, we did do that.
Mm-hmm. So is that going to be talked about on a segment of the monorail that I need to tune into?
You might want to, because that's something we might just be discussing here in the third segment. Now that you,
Oh my God, we just had an in-show tease. That's what's up.
but back to Winnie the Pooh. So the ride gets developed for Walt Disney World. They use the existing structure of Mr. Toad's Wild Ride, and then, as you said, during the Fantasyland expansion, that's when they actually developed the interactive queue, which is supposed to resemble the 100-acre wood and kind of engage the children to play a little bit more and be a little bit more, keep them from getting too antsy, just standing in line without much to see or do. So
because I mean, like it doesn't have a long as way to say like Seven Dwarves Minecart, but this is a ride that is going to generally have a wait that you're going to notice, like north of 30 minutes plus, it seems.
yeah, it depends. I think it depends on the time of day a lot, because I think the biggest, Fantasyland dark ride wait you'll see will be for Peter Pan.
Peter Pan, yeah.
And then if people are kind of like turned off by the idea of waiting an hour and a half for Peter Pan, then they probably, because it's very close, they can just walk over to
literally right next door. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's easy to make that choice, because Winnie the Pooh is a good ride. I mean, if you are a fan of the characters and if you are somebody who just likes the classic Fantasyland dark rides, there's a lot to really like about this. And it's not going to be like the most technologically amazing ride that you're going to experience, but there's some pretty cool things that happen along the way. And it really does. The idea is that it really takes you into a Winnie the Pooh storybook. So a lot of elements of, like, you see the pages with the written text, and then you get to see these stories that you had read about kind of come to life in front of you. The first scene, as you go in after you board into your honey pot, you go into the first room, and it's quite a blustery day. And the effects in this room seem to be relatively simple, but I think that it's pretty neat what they do, showing, like, one of the things, of course, that sticks in my mind is seeing Pooh, like, with his balloon.
Yep.
And it's just like it's a lot of really cute things. It's really cute. It's really sweet.
Heck, even the scene with Roo, like being blown away with Kanga holding on to him. It's like, I dig that. Like it's simple, but at the same time, like, just dig it.
Yeah, these aren't going to be, the most technologically advanced animatronics you're going to see.
No, Rise of the Resistance, this is not.
They might have some limited movement and things, but it's cute and simple, and sometimes that's all you really want. And I think go ahead.
No, I was going to say, it's like simple really does seem like a very operative word here with these animatronics, but at the same time, simple isn't necessarily a negative. It's like, I love seeing those animatronics, and I know we're going to get to it later, but when Tigger shows up and starts bouncing up and down, and like, I love seeing the Tigger animatronic, and it's like, he even makes reference to the point that he's in a ride at one point, which I like, if you're fans of Meta and stuff like that. But it's like, I dig those just very classic feeling Disney animatronics.
That's right. Yeah, it does. It feels classic. It feels, and it's somewhat timeless too, because you've talked about how some of the new animatronics with the projection faces, like, how long is that going to feel like new and neat and interesting before it feels a little bit off-putting?
And as I've already said, I think we're already in the age of, like, yeah, some of those are like, oh, good God, let's go back to the drawing board, so to speak.
Yeah. I think some are really effective, but some are a little bit unsettling. Yeah. Now, as we mentioned, this did replace Mr. Toad's Wild Ride, and they, as Disney sometimes does very well, they put some tips of the cap to Mr. Toad in this ride. And in that first scene, when you see Al's home, it's in a big mess, of course, but you're going to notice there's a picture.
Because it is a blustery day, after all.
But you're going to notice there is a picture of J. Thaddeus Toad himself handing a deed over to Mr. Al. Basically, Mr. Al. How many licks does it take? Wrong Al. But yeah, he's handing the deed over. But basically, the whole idea is, yeah, Winnie the Pooh has taken on this property, and Mr. Toad was moving on. And then there's also a picture of Pooh greeting Moley,
Yep.
Mr. Toad's sidekick, which is flat on the floor to the right. So a couple little things just to notice there, which I really like that kind of thing.
And then, of course, don't forget Mr. Toad is hanging out in the pet cemetery area of the Haunted Mansion.
That's right.
And like after we did the Mr. Toad's Wild Ride M34D, I've been fortunate to go down to the park a couple times. Every time I go through Haunted Mansion, I always make a point.
Yep.
Oh, yeah, there he is.
Yeah. Just a little nod your head, bow your head as you pass the Mr. Toad cemetery. And, yeah.
Exactly. Give him one of the sup.
Yeah. maybe pour out a little of your Red's Revenge as you pass by.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah, so you move through the blustery day. The second room is exactly what you mentioned, the scene with Tigger, and you get to bounce along. And this one is unique because your ride vehicle actually starts to bounce along with Tigger, that's one of my favorite parts of the ride. Of course,
completely unexpected if you've never been on. It's like, what is going on?
Yeah, because even the ride vehicles, they seem like, oh, it's just a simple ride vehicle on a track. You just don't expect it to start doing that. Apparently some of the technology that enables that to happen is basically like the front of the ride has a motion simulator type technology that they use to just rock the ride vehicle back and forth. But yeah, you get to bounce along with Tigger. Who doesn't love Tigger? Who doesn't want to bounce with Tigger through the woods? Yeah. And then we transition into the Heffalump and Woozle portion of the ride. Which
yeah, we do.
Which at that point, it kind of feels like maybe Pooh took too much cough syrup or something. Yeah, it kind of gets a little wild. It's an interesting. I don't like the ride takes a turn that you just maybe if you hadn't ridden it before, it's unexpected. It's almost like that break in the Haunted Mansion where it goes from spooky to silly. It's like,
yeah, what? I mean, I guess in that instance it could be that, but it's like to me, it's like when you go to the Woozles and Heffalump area, or the let's just call it what it is, an acid trip area. It like to me it feels like you're leaving one ride and going into another. To me, it feels like the Heffalump and Woozle area is like kind of cheap, and I know there's some like really cool pieces of art in there. I've watched a couple ride throughs leading up to this, but there's also a lot more pieces of art that just look straight up carny, like the type of stuff that you could see at any sort of like state fair or whatever. It doesn't feel very Disney, and it just takes me, at least it took me out of the experience when I was rewatching these, and I thought maybe I'm being a little bit hard, maybe I'm being kind of ridiculous. Then I went and watched the Tokyo Disney version of this one with the trackless carts, and then their part with the Heffalumps and the Woozles area. Like, yeah, no, I went from feeling it like the Walt Disney one kind of carny to totally carny at that point.
Yeah,
like cheap.
You can't. I guess it's probably not a fair comparison because the Tokyo Disneyland Winnie the Pooh ride is very cutting edge in terms of technology.
And I agree with you, but I felt that even before I went and watched the video of.
But I was going to go back to say, but I do agree with you about this part of the ride, and it's almost like they felt like you said, all due respect, there's things in there that look kind of cool, and you know the kids probably really enjoy it, and maybe they didn't want to go too over the top with it because they thought it might be overwhelming for a kid.
I mean, we already saw that with Seven Dwarf.
Yeah,
or, Snow White. Excuse me.
Snow White. Yeah. So, but maybe the idea was to save a little budget in this part of the ride because
possibly
because there are some other effects that are pretty cool. I mean, they actually use the Pepper's ghost effect in this ride.
Yeah.
When you see Pooh fall asleep and then he kind of floats away, which is also somewhat unsettling. You might think he just passed away. But
you're gonna ask what was in this Coke that I bought.
But it is cool, and that's really neat that they included that in the ride. And then maybe they were like, well, we kind of blew the budget on the Pepper's ghost effect for Pooh, so let's maybe take it easy in the Heffalump portion.
I mean, I guess, but at the same time, you have to remember this is a ride that was made like at the turn of the century.
Yeah.
Like this is a still relatively new ride, and that was what they decided to go with in 1999. It's just like, oh, come on, y'all.
I think you hit it on the head, though. It definitely feels like something you would experience if you rode like a little, uh, kind of a dark ride at a state fair or something.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yeah.
pretty accurate. So, really, you get through the Heffalump portion. You move into an area of there's like rain and clouds and thunder and lightning, and then you get to see all your favorite characters getting soaked by the rain.
Which is what everybody stood in line for.
Yeah. Until we get to the end, and of course Pooh's got his honey, and they
Which, by the way, now that you brought that up, let's address the elephant in the room. Pooh is an addict. Like Pooh has issues, and I think it's kind of exploitive of Disney. The dude, no, I'm just kidding.
We shouldn't be celebrating his honey addiction, maybe.
Actually, this is a podcast intervention. Pooh, please have a seat over there.
Yeah, it's true. He does have a honey problem, but in this
I
case,
guess it's better than having a smack problem.
or he's a bear. I mean, he could like to eat red meat, and
that is true.
Scary.
Yeah. I hadn't thought of that. And plus, smack is more of a frog thing. Never mind.
Gotta have my smacks.
Heck yeah! Shout out to Smacks the frog.
So all in all, it's a fun ride. There's cool things to see in it. I wanted to give a shout out to the voice cast they use, because there's a couple of the original voice actors that actually lend their voice to the ride. One of them being John Fiedler as Piglet, and then or Fiedler, and then the other being Paul Winchell, the voice of Tigger, who this was the last time, I guess, that he actually voiced Tigger himself, from what I read, because his voice had started to become a little too raspy, and eventually Jim Cummings, that does the voice of Winnie the Pooh on this ride, took over for Paul Winchell. So
I didn't know Cummings took over as Tigger at one point. But
yeah.
Wow, yeah. If you're a fan of the classic Disney voices that accompany these classic Disney characters, that is another reason to enjoy this ride.
Absolutely. I mean, and by the way, Paul Winchell, he actually did a few other things that were kind of interesting. He developed a method for cultivating tilapia fish in a remote African village as a means of solving hunger.
Whoa.
And it's kind of an interesting connection, because now you can see in Epcot, if you ride the land, they do the tilapia farming there. So, and then he also, I'm reading that he held patents for an artificial heart, a flameless cigarette lighter, a disposable razor, and invisible garter belt. So this guy,
oh my God,
had a voice, but he was also pretty inventive.
Yeah, I was going to say, it really feels like, oh yeah, by the way, I did some voice acting work for some stuff you might have heard of, but here are all of my inventions.
Right.
Wow.
So just because he couldn't voice Tigger anymore, don't think this guy didn't have a lot of other things.
Wow.
But then Jim Cummings is kind of a famous voice around the parks, because yes, he does voice Winnie the Pooh for the Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh, and replaced Winchell as Tigger for the Disneyland ride. But he himself, Jim Cummings, is the narrator for Illuminations: Reflections of Earth. So, and apparently he's done a lot of other Disney voices just kind of around the parks here and there.
This Jim kid, I think he might have a future in this voice acting stuff.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Just maybe.
Yeah. Of course, Illuminations is going away from us. This is the last week that you can see it. So if you want to hear that famous Jim Cummings narration on that show, you're going to have to go out there this week. R.I.P. Illuminations. Yeah, I don't know. There's some pretty neat little history, little neat fun facts that you can find when you read about what all went into this. And I just think some of the things that it never ceases to amaze me how sometimes ideas are hatched by Imagineers, and then it seems like it just gets kind of tossed away. But decades later, they resurface and they end up using those ideas in one way or another. And this is just another example of that happening. So ideas, I've heard it said that ideas never die in Walt Disney World or the Disney parks. And it seems like that is very true. So,
yeah, I mean, it definitely does seem like, at least in this instance, I mean, we talked about just from the time it was thought, hey, we should have a Winnie the Pooh attraction, to the time we actually got one was, what, 30-ish years? So, I mean, yeah, ideas never die at Disney. They just hang out in the background, maybe go get a smoke break and come back and be like, oh, cool, now you need me.
Yep. Here's a couple other interesting fun facts. Paul Winchell.
Wait. I will be the judge of whether these are fun facts. Please proceed.
Okay. Paul Winchell is the father of April Winchell, a current Disney voice actor who voiced several roles for Goof Troop, as well as Cruella de Vil and Clarabelle Cow.
Okay, anytime Goof Troop is invoked is, in fact, a fun fact. Please proceed.
Okay. And then here's another one that I believe is pretty fun, just because this is a ride that I also miss from the past of Walt Disney World. But as you walk through the interactive queue, you will notice there is a carving inside the treehouse play area of the Nautilus from 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea.
All right, I, in fact, will deem that a fun fact.
Okay.
Ow.
Yeah, you need a gavel.
I do, because I think I am deeming I broke my knuckles. So, not a fun fact.
All right. Did you have anything else you wanted to talk about with the Mini Adventures of Winnie the Pooh, Landon?
No, I really think we covered everything that I brought to the table. Oh, other than, I guess, go watch a ride through of Tokyo Disney's version of this, because, oh my God, it is so cool. It is so cool. That trackless ride technology, like, I'm just blown away by it every time I see it.
As if you were in a blustery day in the 100-acre woods, blown away.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would say, sorry.
No, I was going to say, the one ththing I wanted to add, I love the way this ride ends. You come to the last page of a book with the end.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a nice little bow on it, and staying on theme of that you were in the storybook pages.
Because it's like, this is something I didn't realize until I watched a video doing prep for this. If you pay attention to the pages throughout the queue, it tells you the story of what you're about to experience. So if you'd been reading everything from the time you got into the queue to the time you're about to get off the ride, you have a literal beginning and an end.
Yeah. It's nice. It's a nice connection of just the power of the imagination, the depth of storytelling that goes on in a lot of these children's books, and it's, I don't know, I think it's a perfect dark ride for Fantasyland. And while sure they could update some of these things, like maybe improve a little bit in that Heffalump section, I just, like we said, some of the things and methods that they use for the special effects in the ride are effective, and I think they're really timeless. It's one of those things where it's not going to seem, it's never going to seem kitschy, because it just seems cute, and it does what it needs to do to get the story across for the ride. So that's what I think, and I do think that you should give it a shot. I think you can typically, this is another one of those that I would recommend that if you've used your fast passes earlier in the day and you've got the opportunity to get that rolling forth, you can do that, but you'll miss the interactive queue. So if that's interesting to you and the line is, somewhere in the 20-minute range or something, I would do that.
Because the queue is cool. Is cool?
It's cool.
Yeah, it's cool, y'all. Gnarly. No, the queue is cool. It's one of those, like we talked about Seven Dwarves Mine. They have some interactive parts of that queue. It's like, I don't know if I would stand in line for the wait you normally would with Seven Dwarves just to interact with the queue. I would consider this with Winnie the Pooh, depending on how long the wait is, because the queue is really cool. Like I really dig those swiping screens with the honey.
Yeah, I was gonna say that too.
It's such a cool effect.
Yeah, those are fun.
Like, you can write words in honey. Like if you write really fast, you can write swear words and make all the kids around you really happy. The parents, not so much.
All right. Well, go ride Mini Adventures of Winnie the Pooh. I would love to know if we've got people out there, like, what are your thoughts on this ride? Is it one of your favorites in Fantasyland? For me,
did I make you angry when I said that one section of it's kitschy and carny?
For me, I would put it up there. I mean, honestly, like, I've got a kind of a new appreciation for the Little Mermaid dark ride, because the last couple of times we've ridden it, there's things that I've noticed about it that I hadn't noticed before. And when all of it's working, I think it's very cool. But we'll get to that one eventually. But I guess if you balance it with kind of the wait time and then the experience that you get, it's got to be, it's up there, you know, with one of the ones that I would recommend the most for kids, especially if you've got kids who are fans of the Winnie the Pooh characters. So
yeah. I mean, if you have little ones, excuse me, in your party that are fans of Pooh, this is a must do. And even if you don't, yeah, depending on if you can snag that fast pass, or depending on if the wait isn't that long, I too would say this is an experience you need to experience, because it's like if you can only ride one dark ride in Fantasyland, clearly I would suggest do Peter Pan. But at the same time, Peter Pan always has a really long wait, so maybe head right down the road to Pooh.
Yep, exactly. All right. Well, now let's head right down the road to Landon's plugs. What have you got going on in the rest of your digital offerings, sir? And how can people find it?
Oh, yeah, that would be Landoz. Please go follow me, Landon. I'm the best. Landon, not the rest. Singing at a lower pitch than I wanted to start at. Anyway, that is where you can find me, 280 characters at a time on Twitter. I also own a website, buttmunchchips.com, buttmunchchips.
Sit on your butt and munch.
That's where you can find older podcasts such as Game of Thrones Talk, a.k.a. Got Talk, the R&D Project, Near Fall Radio, if you're a fan of the sweet science of professional wrestling. But in lieu of that, I invite you to go search all three of those terms in the iTunes store, because they're available there. And be sure to subscribe and leave a review, 5 stars or GTFO, I believe, as the kids say. Oh, and I'm also on the Phil Show on News Talk 98.7 WOKI, radio station here locally in Knoxville, Tennessee. Streaming worldwide at newstalk987.com. Also available on the iHeartRadio app, which is available in the iTunes and Google Play Store. And I also believe we just have a straight-up app for ourselves. Search News Talk 987, and you can download it there.
The pause gets longer every time. I'm waiting. When are we going to get to the point where it actually lasts until the next episode? I think it'll happen at some point.
Yeah, at some point I'm just going to go to the pauses and I'm going to click leave meeting, and I'm just going to be gone.
That would be pretty good, because I think when you leave, it would do like a ding dong sound or
Beep,
something.
boop. It's like, okay, well, there goes Landon. Yeah.
It's out the door. Yep. I appreciate that.
Also, real quick, speaking of getting out the door, before we do that, it's been like 2 weeks since I've been back to Walt Disney World, and I'm jonesing to go back. So I'm only half joking when I say this. I'm going to set up a GoFundMe so people can give me money to fund my trips back to Walt Disney World, because you know what? I'm doing it for y'all, if you really think about it. I'm doing it for you, the lovely listener, every time I go down there. Don't you want me to go down there for you?
Just as we said on the Galaxy's Edge episode, we have an obligation to do this. So
yeah, we need a 2 weeks after the fact episode. I need to go back and compare my times in line and my thoughts on the drinks too, to see if they still hold up 2 weeks later. Do you think anybody's buying this?
It's possible. So keep your eyes out. Keep your eyes open. If you follow Landon on Twitter, maybe you'll see a link coming up for the GoFundMe. Send me back to Disney World.
Yeah. You know, screw it. I'm going to do it now. It's already out there. It's on the internet. I have to.
All right, Landon. Well, thanks for joining me. And if you end up, in Disney World next weekend because you've suddenly come into an unbelievable amount of cash, I'll see you then. Otherwise, I'll see you right back here on the monorail.
All right, sounds good. I'm going to go ahead and count my money.